Hey, everybody, it's Angelo Caruso. Welcome to the Talk to Me podcast. My special guest today is Dave Menz. How are you, Dave?
Good. How are you, Michael?
I'm doing great. Thanks for being here, man.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Before we get started, I want to tell everybody, if you're watching the video version of this interview, you can, of course, listen to all of the versions on audio on the Podbean platform, iTunes, all of them. And if you're listening on a podcast platform, you can catch the video version of most of the podcasts on my YouTube channel, michaelangelocaruso.com. Be sure to click the subscribe button so you're notified of new interviews, and also ring that silver notification bell so that you're notified of all new content. Dave Menz is an amazing force of nature. I've been monitoring him online for quite a while now. We actually have some mutual friends in the business. I don't know if you know that. Brian Wallace and I are buds from the Coin Laundry Association.
Yeah, I recently saw you all communicating on, I think it was LinkedIn, and I was like, hey, they know each other.
Yeah, small
Brian's
world,
a good guy.
right?
Very good guy.
The 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon.
Absolutely.
And that's how I came to be interested in the laundromat industry. And then I started seeing your name quite a bit with this brand, the Laundromat Millionaire. If I met you on an elevator and I said, what the hell is Laundromat Millionaire? What would you say to me in 30 seconds?
Yeah, the brand is designed, the name, Laundromat Millionaire, is designed to get people's attention. The funny thing is everybody thinks it's about me bragging about my success. And
Yeah.
I always say from the beginning, I knew that would be the case. But no, what it's really about is just showing people how vitally important laundromats are to the communities that we serve, and
Yes.
how important it is that we operate at a high level. My story is, real quickly, that I went from the low end of the industry, which is just a terrible state of disrepair. Those are the laundromats I've bought, and I've evolved over 12 years to the top of the industry, operating, top operations in the industry. And so my goal now is to not only show people in the industry and out of the industry that this isn't just a vending machine. It's not just a bubblegum machine. This is a real business. Communities rely on us. And I've learned through the School of Hard Knocks and through networking how to operate at the top of the industry. And ultimately, my message is, if I can, you can.
Yeah, bravo. Full disclosure, man, I don't use a lot of laundromats unless I'm out on the circuit and I packed wrong and I need to wash some clothes before I come home. But I want to thank you on behalf of everybody in the country for redoing an industry that was ripe to be redone. I'm thinking about crappy industries like the taxi cab industry that was redone by Uber. It needed it, man. You walked into a laundromat, you felt sometimes like you were taking your life into your own hands.
Yep.
Not
Still
only
do.
were there machines in disrepair, the place was filthy. You're worried you might get mugged while you're waiting for the spin dry. For context, I want to talk about where you've come from and how you got here, because I think a lot of people for example, in my Present Like a Pro group, they're trying to create a brand, they're trying to figure it out. And a lot of them think to themselves, well, I'm not really that good of a presenter. My content's not that good. I really love speaking. And they tend to set the bar really low and forget about what they're capable of. Right? I was reading an article about Marianne Williamson the other day. She said that we're not really afraid of failing. We're afraid of how successful we can be. And so I want to drop Dave Menz in front of everybody as kind of a wake-up call, a slap in the face, if you will, that look what this guy did and look what's possible for you. You are a Michigan native. You're in Cincinnati now, but you grew up in the Flint area, yeah?
Correct.
And you said you're a GM baby, dad, and maybe dad before that?
My dad didn't work in the factories, but both my grandparents on both sides, pretty much every aunt and uncle that I have were intertwined in the industry, either directly or indirectly through suppliers. I mean, that's what drove the Flint economy for 50 years.
And I don't know how long Flint has had the water problem, but Flint was never known as a place people relocated to.
No.
It was a place that people grew up in and left as soon as possible. No disrespect to the city. Unfortunately, we have a lot of cities in America that are like that. And they're all trying to, bolster their image and do better. The water thing put it, reversed it. If it was 3 steps forward, it took it 5 steps back.
It definitely did. A lot of people don't realize that when you think of like crime and poverty and things like that associated with Michigan, a lot of people think of Detroit, because it's a huge city.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize that Flint actually has worse crime and worse poverty than the city of Detroit.
Well,
It just doesn't get that recognition.
and numbers being what they are, I would say Detroit probably has a better public relations team than Flint.
I'm sure it does.
But both cities have had their travails.
Yes.
Detroit went into bankruptcy. We were at the bottom. We were the first one into bankruptcy, first city to get in trouble in the recession, mostly because of automotive, and the last one to come out of it, out of the bucket. We came out of bankruptcy pretty quickly. And all this is about rebranding. It's about assessing where you really are and then getting a grip, pulling yourself up by the bootstraps, identifying resources and making it happen. So you grew up in the Flint school system, public schools?
We weren't in Flint proper. We were in the suburbs. We were in Burton, if you know where that is.
Okay. No, I don't. But it was its own school district, apparently.
Yeah.
Okay. A lot of these, they group together in ISDs or something like that.
Yeah, we were just outside the city limits, technically the suburbs. Yeah.
Okay. And what was your self-image as a teenager? I'm curious about this because a lot of us, when we get to be 30 and 40 and 50, there's always that little peek in the rearview mirror about, like, I was a skinny runt. I wasn't big enough to play sports. I didn't have a very good self-esteem when I was a kid. Some say I have too much now. Where'd you come from?
Yeah, as a teenager, we had moved to Cincinnati. My baby sister, at when she was 9 and I was 14, was diagnosed with malignant brain tumor, and we didn't know it was terminal at the time. But 5 years later, she passed away. So from my age of 14 to my age of 19, my baby sister was basically dying. So it was a very, I didn't know anything else because that was just my life. But your teenage years are very formative. And I had already been through a lot of tragedy and, growing up in poverty and things like that in Flint. And this was just like another kick in the teeth. It just felt like, my parents were grinders, they're hard workers. And they had kind of gotten us out of poverty, out of Flint, gotten us to like this lower middle class lifestyle where we weren't comfortable, but we were the least safe. And then bam, this hit our family. And so that was basically my teenage years. Was my entire life revolved around my sister and what she needed and where we needed to go. And ultimately at 19, at the end of my teenage years, I sat in Children's Hospital in Cincinnati and watched my little sister take her last breaths. So that was my teenage years. And I knew it was rough. I knew I was going through things that my friends weren't, but being 45 now and looking back on it, I'm just like, wow, wow. It was powerful.
There's a couple firsts in life that'll really shake your cage. And one of them is your first memory of someone close to you passing. I mean, fortunately, a lot of people don't have someone close to them pass away until they're in their 20s or maybe 30s. Mom and dad hopefully hang on till you're at least in your 50s, right? Because saying goodbye to mom and dad's tough. But saying goodbye to somebody in your family who's younger than you has to be the worst kind of pain. I don't talk about this often, but when I must have been 19, my brother Joe, who was a year younger than me, was on a full ride scholarship to CMU. He came home one day and had a lump in one of his testicles. Went to the doc, and the family doctor said, "Don't worry about it. It's a cyst." He misdiagnosed him. 6 months later, my brother's screaming in pain. He can't handle it anymore. They goes in for what was called exploratory surgery, and he was diagnosed with testicular cancer. And he didn't die, fortunately, but we lived on the edge there for 2 years, thinking he might die. And I'll tell you what, and I can tell by looking in your eyes, man, you get a serious time management lesson when one of your siblings might be dying. I started thinking about myself and my time differently. I couldn't put all those lessons into play right away. Do you ever think about that? Like, that was some sort of a wake-up call for you, and you didn't even know it?
Yeah, no, I don't know if I was, my brain was developed enough to fully grasp it. But what I did know at a very young age, early teenage years, is, the stereotypical teenager thinks that they're bulletproof, right? They're invincible. We kind of all do. It's just kind of a rite of passage, I guess. I didn't. I never did. not a day in my life after my sister, because she was my baby sister. She was 5 years younger than me.
Yeah.
And like you said, you lose your grandparents or even your parents. That's like semi-natural,
Right.
order of the way it should work.
Right.
You're not like, when you're 14, you're not supposed to lose your 9-year-old baby sister. And I mean, she was 14 when she passed, but um, excuse me. The lesson that I learned from that was from at a very, very young age, is that I wasn't invincible and that every day was precious. And I didn't really process it back then. I mean, I still was just the running around crazy teenager hanging out with my friends. But very 5 years is a long time. So it's not like every day we were crying that she was dying. I mean, there's
Right.
ups and downs. There was times when she went into remission and things like that, or supposed remission. And so we had hope, and then we didn't have hope, and all these different things. And it was a roller coaster. But really, if I could pull one life lesson out of that, it would be somewhere in the middle. My minister from our church, I was kind of feeling sorry for myself, and I asked him. I said, why do things like this happen? And he was like, there's a lot of reasons that these things happen.
Yeah.
And he never said any more. He was a very wise, didn't speak a whole lot of words, to be honest. But that, I don't know what it was, but that clicked with me.
Yeah.
And ever since then, I've been fascinated with the positive. Like, one of the things my mom told me early on, is I was probably also feeling sorry for at least our family. And my mom said, just remember, we spent years in children's hospital, literally years. And you see a lot. I mean, you see a lot of bad stuff. You meet people and the next day they're gone, and they're kids, and it's hard.
Yeah.
And yeah, my mom told me one time, she said, just remember, somebody always has it worse than us.
Yeah.
And I think those two things really stuck with me. So
Yeah.
whenever I go through adversity, and I've went through a lot more since then, I always remind myself, somebody has it worse than me. And that's not really great advice to give someone else,
Yeah.
but it is pretty great advice to like internalize and try to, it'll kind of, I don't know what it does, but it kind of snaps my psyche.
Well, it's not really advice in the truest sense. It's more like perspective, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yep, it is.
The priest comment was interesting because I'm watching a documentary on Harry Nilsson, the songwriter, and apparently he approached Bob Dylan one time, and he was scratching his head because he didn't understand a lot of the stuff that was going on in the music industry and life and this kind of thing. And Dylan looked at him and said, "Why do you feel the need to understand everything?"
Yeah.
We don't. We just
Yeah.
need to figure out enough to be successful and help other people and get through the day, right?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this, Michael. I'm glad you brought that up. What was the thing that got me through those times was that I don't know, conscious, subconscious, whatever. I just decided to look for the positives.
Yeah.
I was just like, I don't, and maybe it was a defense mechanism. I don't want to focus on the fact that she's dying and she's suffering and she's miserable and this shouldn't be happening and all these things. I was like, I want to look for the positives. And that still to this day is kind of burned in me. I mean, not that I'm just like this super positive person naturally, because I'm probably not, but I always try to look for those. So whenever I go through adversity in life or tough times, I'm always just like, you know what? I'm going to focus on what it takes to dig out of this, that grit that we all have within us.
Yeah.
But I'm also going to focus on the lessons. And one of the lessons I got out of my sister suffering and eventually dying was that I am really, really strong. And I don't know that I knew that before that. And
Yeah.
I'm very confident in that now. And I look back on that, and years later, not to hijack the interview here, but years later, I lost my older brother. These were my only two siblings to drug addiction. He suffered for years and years, and so I lost my baby sister, and I lost my idol, my older brother. And I talk about both of these briefly in my book as kind of my backstory of kind of how I grew up, and that was very, very difficult in a very, very different way. And both of those things just taught me to cherish and appreciate life, and to just look for the positives, because while there's all kinds of negatives that are very glaringly obvious, there's a lot of positives. And I sometimes feel guilty when I say this, but I'm the man I am today because I have went through those things.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I would be the man I am today without them. And
Yeah.
grateful for, I don't think I'm perfect, but I'm grateful for who I am today. And I take that like responsibility of their shortened lives and say, sorry, uh, I need to do something with my life.
Yeah. Um, I didn't have the tragedy that you had, but I had the awareness, because of the hospitalization and the chemotherapy and the
Yeah.
surgery he was an early testicular patient, cancer patient. So he had a lot of, they didn't have the chemo dialed in yet. So it was very painful for him. We had to give back rubs 5 or 6 times a day just to keep him from agony.
Wow.
But we had so much negativity during those days. It's the way I think of it, Dave. We had so much negativity in those days. I felt like I got my quota. And I didn't need to trouble myself with negativity moving forward. I was going to be able to work past, deflect negative situations, see the best in people, see the best in situations, try to learn from everything, right? I see the book behind you there, The Laundromat Millionaire. So we're talking about a guy, ladies and gentlemen, who grew up in Flint, Michigan, lost. Did you lose your older brother as a youngster?
He was 39 and he was 2 years older than me. So it was probably 25 years later in life, but
Yeah. Yeah.
and it was, there's many reasons that people get sucked into drug addiction, but I, to this day, I firmly believe that my sister and her tragedy and his lack of ability to deal with it was the beginning. I
Well,
firmly
it makes
believe
complete
that.
sense, doesn't it? In the same way
Yep.
we're talking about where you are today as a
Yep.
result of what happened with your sister,
Yep.
your brother is where he is today, possibly
That's right.
partially as a result of what happened in the early days.
No doubt. And there's times I feel guilty about that because I'm like, wait a second, this made me incredibly strong. And it
Survivor's
just
guilt.
destroyed him. Yeah, it just destroyed him. Like he felt guilty.
Yeah,
He used to tell me all the time, why did this happen to her and not me? And I
right.
was like, I'm your younger brother. How do I answer that?
Yeah,
I still to this day don't really understand why I never felt that way. I mean, I would have taken her place in 5 seconds, but I never felt like guilty that she died and I didn't.
yeah.
I don't know. I just didn't.
Well, people
Just
respond.
weird how these things affect different people. And obviously we're different people. I'm a little more or a lot more stubborn and obstinate. And my brother was a little more of kind of like a softy, if you will.
Yeah,
So maybe that had something to do with it. I don't know.
you never know. In my family, my brother being sick in his college years, first year, freshman year at Central Michigan, impacted indirectly. I've never said this out loud before, but you've got me thinking. It indirectly impacted the trajectory of our formal education in college for various reasons that I don't need to get into right now. Did you find that your sister's passing changed what you might have done with your education? And what did you do with education? I'm going to link this to your success here in a minute.
Mm-hmm. Early on, I don't know that it did. Yeah, I attended community college for a year. I was never good at school. I hated school. I loved the things that I felt were very practical and actionable about life. And
Right.
I always thrived in those classes and loved those teachers. And the things that I just couldn't see practical purpose for, I struggled with. I couldn't pay attention. I couldn't focus. I just didn't care. I didn't have a negative attitude. I just honestly was like, this is like what light. I think it goes back to my sister, to be honest with you. And I'm like, therapy now all of a sudden. I apologize. But I was like, you know what?
No
Life's
extra,
too important.
no
Like
extra
life's
charge,
too
Dave.
right. But I mean, like life's too, like, what are we doing here? Like this is like an hour of my life I'll never get back. And that's what we're doing with it. Like that was my mentality, which is quite frankly very different than all my friends. But what ended up happening, the quick version is that I tried community college. I barely graduated from high school. I didn't really want to go to college, but everybody in my life told me you either go to college, get a degree and be successful, or you'll be working at Taco Bell. And there's no exception.
Yeah.
Nothing else will happen. Those are your two options. And I was like, holy cow, I don't want to work at Taco Bell my whole life. So I guess I better go to college. Well, I went to college and I hated it. I got good grades, but I hated it. And so
Right.
after a year, I dropped out, got a job at the local telephone company, an entry level position. over the next 13 or 14 years, I worked my way up in the company. I was promoted. I took some trade classes and eventually became one of the linemen that climbed the telephone poles and work on the phone lines.
You were a
And that's
lineman
what,
for the county?
yeah, well, for the telephone company, a little bit different, but yeah, I've heard that a lot. That's an old song.
Little
But
Glenn Campbell reference for all you
yeah,
people that are wondering what we're
yep,
laughing at.
yep. Yeah, I've heard that many times. But anyway, what my point is that what eventually did end up happening is I had this like epiphany or come into Jesus meeting with myself in the mirror in my bathroom at 5 a.m. in the morning when I was getting ready for work one day. And I looked at myself in the mirror as I'm putting on my jeans and my sweatshirt, and I said, "You're a sellout." And that's pretty much a response I get from people is the raised eyebrows. And that's the truth. What happened is I had always wanted to be a business owner since at kindergarten graduation, they line all the kids up and this one wants to be Batman and this one wants to be a baseball player. I said, I want to own my own business. Well,
No kidding.
this is back in the early 80s. Being an entrepreneur was not cool or sexy back then like
Right.
it is today. It was a very
Did you know
different
what
times.
kind of business, or you
No,
just the business?
that's the cool thing about it, Michael, is I didn't care and I still don't. Like people think I'm like crazy nuts in love with laundromats or laundry. I'm like, no, 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 no. I love business because
I saw,
what business is, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm excited. I saw an interview that you said that you didn't even necessarily want to get into the laundry business. It was like an accident.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, it was intentional, but what I was doing is I was looking for the laws of supply and demand in any business to be tipped in my favor. I didn't want to be what I call that 15th pizza place on the corner where if
Right.
I succeeded or failed, nobody really cared.
Right.
I wanted to find people that now what I call are in pain. And I don't mean literal pain, but I mean like their needs are not being met, not their wants, their needs. That's
Right.
just what I wanted to do with my life. Once again, every hour of my life is valuable to me and I want to make a difference. And I was looking for a business where there was a tremendous amount of need. And the funny thing is, Michael, I looked for 5 years. Like I looked at every business under the sun and I had very limited capital. So I didn't have the ability, I couldn't just chase in anything I wanted. But we eventually found a local laundromat a couple miles from our house for sale. And I had studied business my whole life. I was obsessively passionate about it. I knew whatever business I bought, I would need to keep my full-time job for at least a little while I got that one off the ground and got it profitable and able to support my family. And I was just like, this is it. And then the next thing I did is I found a mentor. So I found a local equipment distributor and I talked to all the equipment distributors in Cincinnati. All of them were very nice, very helpful. And one of them definitely stood out. I made just a bulletproof relationship with them very quickly. We clicked. We understood each other. He wanted to help me be successful. I said, that's important to my success. And then the other thing is I wanted to look at the laws of supply and demand in that market. And I didn't know much about laundromats or even business really, but I went around and there was 9 laundromats within a 20-mile radius of this store. And the one I was buying was in just almost as bad a shape as you can imagine. But the funny thing was all 9 of the other ones were too.
Hmm.
And I was just like, you know what? I don't need to research the United States. I don't need to research all of Cincinnati. I just need to research what I now call my submarket, which is people will typically only drive about 4 or 5 miles in any one direction to go to a laundromat. And there's many reasons for that. And I kind of had like a gut instinct that people aren't going to drive 45 minutes away to use a laundromat. They're going to want to stay in their local community. And then I looked at the laws of, excuse me, the laws of supply and demand. And I was like, all these places are awful. Well, I knew I'm a perfectionist by nature. Like I'm not playing around here. And so I knew like when I take over this place, like I'm not going to leave it this way. I don't know how I'm going to do this or what I'm going to do, but I know where I'm going to end up eventually. And so my thing was every day that goes by that I'm grinding and driving forward to improve my business and my knowledge and my networking and all these things. Every day I do that they don't, I'm one more step ahead of them. And the
Hmm.
funny thing is, not a one of them to this day has like I completely dominate the east side of Cincinnati where my 5 laundromats are. And to this day, not a one of my competitors even cares, to be honest with you. Um,
They're
they
not in the
just
game.
they just don't. I mean, and it's so common. And that's where the Laundromat Millionaire comes in because this is so common that what I tell people is you can look at an environment and an industry like the laundromat industry and you can say, wow, that's awful. That's disgusting. I'm repulsed. I don't want anything to do with that industry. That's not even a real business. or you can look at it and go, wow, what an opportunity. Like, what an opportunity to literally change people's lives, to
Yeah.
serve people in a way that, quite frankly, they're not often served.
And
And
you
what
guys
ends up
got,
happening, I'm sorry?
you guys got essential services designation
Yes,
during
we
COVID,
did. Absolutely.
which,
And the funny thing is, all of us laundromat owners, we already knew that. Like, we already knew that we were essential. We were
yeah,
under no illusion. When COVID happened, we were all freaking out, of course, because we didn't know what would happen. But when we were designated essential and we all stayed open, none of us were surprised, because
yeah.
we understand that a laundromat in every community is a vital community resource. It's not something someone wants, it's
Mm.
what something someone needs.
What would your second choice for business, industry, and company have been? Do you even have a second choice? Did it ever get there?
No, it never got there. And I looked for 5 years. Like, this was the first laundromat I looked at. I never considered the laundromat industry, like, just never thought about it.
Yeah.
And when I found this one and I started doing my due diligence, I just never stopped. And I tell people I did my due diligence and I did my due diligence and I did my due diligence, and I just ended up at closing because I never had any red flag pop up. But I had an awful lot of, I don't know if we call them white flags, not surrendering, but I had an awful lot of things pop up that just screamed at me that, Dave, you are meant to do this. This is what you're on earth to do. And it was really powerful because I didn't care. I still don't care what the product is.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of what my book and my brand and stuff is about. This isn't about laundry, guys. Like, this is about people. I always tell people business is two things. It's about people and it's about math.
Mm.
That's it. That's what business is about. And you can literally break it down to that much. And the math doesn't matter if you don't focus on the people, by the way.
Yeah. Uh, so I think a lot of people are in stasis. They're doing their day job, they're doing their telephone lineman job, but they have ambitions and they have dreams, but they either don't have the courage or the wherewithal or the encouragement that they need to make the jump. You said you lived a double life for a while. Can you talk about that? I know that you worked a lot of hours for a long period of time. What did the average day look like to you?
Yeah, for about a 4 to 5 year period of time, I estimate I worked at 90 to 100 hours a week between commuting to my day job, working my day job. Sometimes we had call outs because we would have emergencies and stuff. And when I wasn't doing that, I was in my laundromats because we didn't have a lot of money and I needed to turn these things around. And I had very little money, which I used for materials and resources and things like that when I couldn't provide the sweat equity. And other than that, the only option I had was sweat equity. So I knew I had to make these businesses better. I knew I didn't want to stay where it was. And I only really had one way to do it because even at that point, we had a nice little comfortable middle class life. But I mean, we had a small emergency fund, a little bit of money, and a 401k, and that's it. I mean, we were in
Yeah.
our early 30s and we had 3 young kids. And I didn't tell you, Michael, the day we closed on our first rundown dumpy laundromat, my wife, who's was a school teacher, was on maternity leave. And our oldest or our youngest boy was 3 weeks old. So when we went to closing, she was on maternity leave. We had a 3 week old baby. We had a 2 year old toddler. And then my daughter was roughly 11
Wow.
at that point. And that was like, my wife was like, are you out of your mind? Like, but the beauty of it is, like, my wife is, I mean, she still thinks I'm a little nuts to this day because I guess I am, but she's a very big believer that we are here to live our best life. And she understands that who I am and what I'm meant to do isn't necessarily who she is and what she's meant to do. And I understand and respect that too. So
Yeah.
while it can cause some stress, I mean, I couldn't have married a better woman to be supportive of me chasing my dreams when an awful lot of good women would have been like, no, 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 this ain't happening. Because
Yeah.
it was not like, it was really bad timing. But I've just studied business my whole life. And what I always looked at was, sometimes the right opportunity comes along and like, you may not get that again. And we didn't have a lot of money. I didn't have, a high level of business acumen. I didn't have an MBA or something like that. I needed something that I could just grind and scrape and scrap because that's who I am. That's what I'm good at. That's what Flint brought out in me. My childhood brought out in me. And I knew that was really the only thing I had going for me.
But even if you had an MBA, I don't think people understand this. They think, well, if I only had an MBA, if I only had seed money, if I only had an outgoing personality, It's not about any of those things.
Nope.
It's about a combination of circumstances. And the crux of it all is what I'm hearing you say is your ambition and drive. And I'm going to get it done. I'm going to find a way. Back to that thing about doing stuff, going through life and not understanding everything. You didn't understand it.
Nope.
Your wife didn't understand you even, but it worked out, right? Because there's an order to things in life. We're meant to succeed. We're not meant to fail and be destitute. We're meant to be happy. We're meant to succeed and be strong enough to help other people. Absolutely.
Well, what it boils down to is the subtitle to my book is The Grit to Elevate an Industry. And the reason that is because I always tell people, I'm like, I don't, when people say like, what's your superpower, Michael? People usually can pretty quickly name their superpower or 2 or 3. I always tell people mine's grit, I guess, because I don't know that I really have one. I just won't quit. Like I'll just keep coming. When I decide something is important, not necessarily.
We need a Marvel superhero named Grit.
Right.
On his chest.
Yeah. Well, hopefully he's a little better looking than me.
Oh, you could be him. That'll be like your next little branch off the superhero. Grit.
I could see it now, a cartoon on my LinkedIn page.
We can push in some of the progression. If you have 5 laundromats now, you probably had 1 at one point, then 2. Mm-hmm. Were there some seminal moments along the way, or was it a gradual path?
No, there was definitely what I call pivot points along the way that were very intentional, but were not planned out. I live every day of my life, and my only goal in life is to be better tomorrow than I was yesterday.
Yeah.
That's it. Notice I didn't bring anyone else into that equation. I didn't say compared to Michael. I didn't say compared to other laundromat owners. I just want to be a better version of myself. Yeah. Husband, father, Christian, and business owner. Those are the things that are important to me. And I just got up every day and I was like, what can I do today? I mean, I was like, no pun intended, but I was hair on fire. I mean, I was just like, what can I do today? Like I had this sense of urgency, like the world was coming to an end and these laundromat customers needed me.
So give us an example of a pivot point. Something that made your needle jump in terms of growth or understanding the business or.
Yeah. The first laundromat I bought was unattended. And that just is exactly what it sounds like. It means there's no staff on duty. You might have a person come in clean for an hour or 2, but generally speaking, the place quote unquote runs itself. People come in, they put their equipment or laundry in the washers, dryers. They provide all the labor, they fold it, they pack it up in the car and they leave. They only leave behind basically some dirt usually. Right. That's the stereotypical laundromat. And that is a model in the industry. And that's the first business that I bought. I wanted to operate at the top of the industry. I wanted to provide a value prop to our community that was unbelievable. And what ended up happening is over the first 3 or 4 years, I created an environment and a business model where our unattended business was very good. But as I evolved and learned the rest of the business and networked with people and learned the other side of the industry, one of the things stood out to me, and it was customer service. And it was no matter how quickly I answered my phone, and no matter how quickly I jumped in my car and ran up there and helped that lady or man, I couldn't substitute for someone being on site. Attended. And so, yeah. And so I tell people that you can run a very nice unattended laundromat, but the one thing that an unattended laundromat can't ever be is an attended laundromat. Yeah. It can't compete with that value prop. And then there's other levels to it as well. But that was really my first epiphany, because when I first got in the business, I took this business that was losing money. And within about 3 months, it was breaking even. And within about 6 months, it was making a profit of a couple $1,000s a month. Well, that was like more than my mortgage payment. Here I am, middle class with 3 babies at home. Like that was like, holy cow, I got this little side business that kind of runs while I'm at work. And I stop by there in the morning and I stop by there in the evening. And it makes me a couple grand a week. Like this is amazing. And so I first thought I want to own 20 of these. I want to have 30 of these. I want to have 40 of these. And I'm going to run them all exactly the same. Well, then I learned and I grew because I'm kind of obsessive with information. And then I learned, you know what? I don't want 10, 15, 20, 30 of these. The ones that I run, whether it's 1, 2, 5, or 10, I want them to be at the top of the industry. I want to serve my community in a way that I now call uncompetable. So my business model now has evolved over time. And now what it is everything in my business that I do, I try to do at a level that if somebody built a laundromat right across the street, there's no part of my value proposition that they could exceed. They could only meet me where we are as a team.
Yeah.
So it's been an evolution for sure.
So 5 stores now, you must have a 5-year plan or some ambition about where the future takes you?
We're building our 5th store right now, so it's not even open yet. It's definitely a dream project for sure. It's a 9,000 square foot. It'll end up being probably the biggest and nicest laundromat in the entire state of Ohio. So it's definitely the culmination of all those 12 years of knowledge. Very exciting, very big investment, and will be amazing for the community. I will probably build a few more laundromats over the course of my lifetime because I'm only 45. But right now I've kind of stumbled into this like Laundromat Millionaire stuff. And my wife says, man, if you thought Dave was passionate about running laundromats, get him talking about Laundromat Millionaire. That's a whole different level. And
Right.
the reason for that is really simple, because all the things I talked about my community needing me and needing to be served, as I learned about the industry, I learned that this is a microcosm of the entire industry. And most communities in the world, or in the United States at least, are in this situation regarding their laundromats. And I thought, man, I can spend all my time owning, operating, building, managing, employees, excuse me, running laundromats, or I can teach other people how to do this. Because one of the biggest problems in our industry is education. Like there isn't a lot of knockdown, drag out, amazing education.
Yeah.
Our industry is full of great people that own laundromats. And yeah, some of them don't care, but a good portion of them do care, but they don't know how to do it better.
Yeah.
And there's also this message that's spun in our industry, which is, this is how you run a laundromat. It's a white box. You put washers and dryers in it. People help themselves. You stop by for an hour or two each day and clean up after them. It's a commodity mindset is what I call it.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to permeate the industry with the things that I learned from my mentors and coaches at the top of the industry, which is no. That's what y'all do at the bottom of the industry. The top of the industry is all focused on servitude. It's focused on serving others. It's not focused on a widget. And so what I'm really trying to do now with my book and my podcast and all these different things is just to really get a message out to the world that the laundromat business is one of the best small businesses in America if you do it the way that the top of the industry does it. And we got a long ways to go. And so that's something that I'm now very, very passionate about, because I see a need. I see my industry needs me. I really believe that.
It's interesting to hear you talk about getting into education, and I guess some people might call it consultancy or something like this. I've said forever, and I know it's not all about the money, but the best paid doctor in the United States is not a practicing physician. It's Dr. Oz or Dr. Phil, if he's even really a doctor. And the best paid anybody is usually the celebrity at the top of the thing that's teaching others or helping others. When I say celebrity, I mean somebody that everybody's watching and copying and listening to, So you also have an annual event now that it's become almost like a cult of personality. There is a Coin Laundry Association, but there's a Dave Menz community, and the enthusiasm for what you've done with your brand is now, it merits its own trade show. Is that what's happening?
Yeah, I don't know if that organically happened or if I willed it to be. I'm just the type of person that, I acknowledge risk. But if I decide or let me rephrase that, if I believe that I'm meant to do something, like, the consequences are irrelevant to me.
Yeah.
And our trade association is amazing. I mean, they're amazing, but they'll be the first to tell you the name of it is the Coin Laundry Association, and they're fantastic people. I consider them all my friends. They do amazing work. They are, and I talk about them ad nauseum in my book, by the way, and I give them all the credit or a lot of the credit for my success, because they've helped me get to where I am. But the reality is they're a small trade association, and they have limited resources, as every industry really does. No trade association has unlimited resources. And so I'm not competing with them. In fact, I'm trying to work with them and collaborate, or whatever you want to call it. I'm just trying to make my own mark on the industry, because the moral to my story is I went from pretty extreme poverty as a kid. When I bought my first laundromat, our entire net worth was roughly $50,000. And now, as I sit here today at 45 years old, we're multimillionaires. Well, that's because I served my communities in a way that other people wouldn't, and I was rewarded accordingly.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of business. And that's my message and my brand is not about look at me and what I did so
Right.
that you can admire me and think I'm so fantastic. My brand is and my message is very simple. Look at me and what I did because you can do it too, because
Right.
I'm really not that smart. And I want other people to do it. I have this sense of gratitude and gratefulness for this industry that has literally changed my family tree, my life, but my family tree. I absolutely believe that. And now I want to pay it forward because there was a time when I figured out the opportunity in this industry where I was like, I want to own every laundromat in the country. Like I'm obsessive. Like if I can't own one, I want to own 300. And then I figured out like I can actually serve those communities, move the needle, make a difference in our industry by spending my days teaching others how I accomplished what I did.
Mm.
And do I take some arrows for that? Yeah, I do. I mean, when you brand yourself Laundromat Millionaire, that comes across as pretty braggy, and I get it. But I'm just trying to break through the noise. I'm just trying to get people's attention. That's it.
Yeah, I think too that as good as an association might be, or a company, or I do a lot of sales coaching, and a lot of the companies that I serve are going up against Amazon. And the language that we always use is nobody has a best friend who sells at Amazon. It's a conglomerate. It's a web interface. There's something about a personality. When I said cult of personality earlier, that connotation is usually negative, but I don't think it has to be. I think when you get the right Pied Piper in your life, it can be really useful and helpful. I've had many in my life. Some people call them mentors or coaches. Sometimes these people I don't even meet. I just know them from online or YouTube or podcast. I mean, think about all the people you're helping that you're never even going to meet.
I'm already experiencing that, and I had no idea. Like,
Yeah.
I thought I had a few hundred people paying attention. I'm finding out I got thousands. It's kind of crazy. It's kind of creepy because people will come to me at different events that are not my events, or trade shows that I speak at or whatever, and they're just like, you're Dave Menz. Like, I love your podcast. And I'm like, I've literally never heard this person's name in my life.
Yeah.
Like, you know how online is. I mean, you can get in Facebook groups and forums and stuff, and you may not know the person, but you at least know the name, right? Like, I see you on LinkedIn and stuff. I know the name. So if you came up to me somewhere before we did this, I'd be like, oh yeah, you're on LinkedIn. Oh, great to meet you.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't be shocked that you knew of me. But when I've never seen your name, comment, like, post, share, never heard of you in my life, I'm like, and you love my podcast? Really? That's crazy. So yeah, it's exciting because I believe that we should all do two things in our life. I believe we should do things that we're passionate about, and I believe we should do things that are fulfilling to us.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people believe in chasing other things. That's just what I do with my life. I'm very passionate about this. And is it hard work? Oh my gosh, it's unbelievably hard work. And as I mentioned, I take a lot of bullets. I take a lot of arrows. Being selfish, and I get called a lot of things by calling myself the Laundromat Millionaire and all these things. At the end of the day, when I have a client, if you want to call them that, when I have somebody that I've helped be successful and I understand the impact they're going to have on their community, probably more than they do, because I help them accelerate their knowledge and education, there isn't much more fulfilling to me than that. And the beauty is, by the nature of technology, sharing stories, writing books, creating courses, having conferences, all these different things, these things are exponential. Like, you and I can create one podcast and someone could hypothetically learn from this talk 5 years from now.
Yeah.
But it only took an hour of our time, right? I mean, we're moving on with our life after this. We're doing what we do, but this could help people forever and ever. Amen. Yeah. And there's just something really powerful about that, really fulfilling to me, that when I spend my time doing something like this, I know it's going to pay fruits forever. And I don't have to see the fruits. I'm okay with that. I don't need that pat on the back. I just need to know that that's going to happen, and I'm just going to be on to the next thing.
Well, it's so refreshing to connect with you and talk with you, and thank you for the life lessons. I know that my audience will be very appreciative. Where can people find your book, man?
Right now it's in pre-sale, so they can only get it on my website, which is laundromatmillionaire.com. That's Laundromat with an O. But it'll be out. I have a publisher out of New York, Morgan James Publishing, And the book will be out in bookstores, airports, Amazon, ebook, the whole 9 yards in June. So yeah, right now, if they go to my website, what I'm doing with all the pre-sale orders is I'm literally fulfilling them myself. So everybody that orders my book between now and June off my website, I autograph it, write them a nice little note in there for them just to show appreciation. So they can
Nice.
get it right now if they want to. Yep.
You should throw a dryer sheet in every book.
That's a great idea. I love it.
Morgan
I love
James, that's David Hancock, my buddy.
It is. He's amazing. Amazing guy.
Well,
Amazing.
congratulations on
Yes.
everything, man. I'm so impressed.
Thank you.
with you. I hope we get a chance to do some things moving forward.
Yes. Thank you.
Very
Thanks
much
for reaching
being on
out.
today. And I'll send you a link when all this is done. We'll help more people.
Fantastic. Thanks for your time, Michael. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dave.
All right. Take care.
This has been the Talk to Me podcast, everybody. We hope you enjoyed it. Check out the iTunes platform and also check out the YouTube channel, Michael Angelo Caruso on YouTube. See you soon.